All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to World Hoppers, the collaborative channel where we talk about books and all of the proceeds from ad revenue and merch sales, link down below, go to charity. And we are here today to talk about some stuff we liked in 2024, things we enjoyed. We might bring up things we also didn't enjoy, but the
As a
main
point of
point here,
comparison, you know what
yes,
you
just
like because
yes,
you know what you don't like.
yes. Or if someone in the group hated something we loved,
It's a strong word.
They wouldn't
hates
dare.
a song,
Somebody just,
dislike.
I think they just need to read it better, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you read it wrong.
Read it
That's
smarter.
yes, please read
Right.
it smarter. I figured we could start with a couple of surprising, if anyone had any. I had a few most surprising, and I think probably the most surprising was this. I had a NetGalley e-arc of The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong, and it's like cozy fantasy, which tends to not be my jam. I tend to find it either so boring I DNF or like way too cutesy and like I don't know. What do you always say, Lena? Twee? Yeah.
Do the tweet for
And
me.
yes, and this one was just I don't know what it was. It just hit right. It was very like low stakes with the plot and everything, but the little found family, I just found them so like heartwarming and fun and just like fun to hang out with. And there's like deeper themes. There's like identity, cultural identity. Our main character is like, well, she was born in another country and she's like, there's not that many people from her homeland and she's kind of lost touch with like a lot of the cultural things that are from her homeland. She's not really like connected to it and she's struggling with that. And it was just, I don't know, just a fun time. I just liked hanging out with them. So it was very surprising. I gave it like 4.5 stars, I think.
The
Um,
cover, I've never seen it up close, but every time someone holds it up, it's giving Lisa Frank.
Yes. Oh my God.
I
Yeah.
see that.
There's
Yeah.
another version that is like, I think it's the UK one that is very different. But yeah, this one, I think that's what like caught my eye was the cover. Cause I'm like, colors.
Like
Yay,
the
and a
memes that are like,
kitty.
why did every millennial want to be a marine biologist? It's like
Yeah.
because Lisa Frank dolphin binders.
100%. Yeah. And it was just very cute. And yeah, there are like little animal companions. There's a little kitty and there's a little, I think it's a donkey that's like the little donkey carrying the cart. And they don't like talk or anything. They're not like magical creatures. They're just little animals that hang out and they're so cute. So yeah, that was one of mine. Did you
I
have
think
any,
I
Andrew? Surprising?
most surprising. Um, See, this is going to further prove the point that I think I can reread something in, but I don't know how. Actually, I think at one point I had a video that I said that I hated the series or something, but it was so I just change my mind all the time, basically. But I reread the whole Darker Shade of Magic series.
Oh yeah.
So, and I remember, like, I listened to it on audio, and I remember, Kramer and Redding are not my favorite, which I feel like is also super unpopular from
Oh, is
what
that who
everybody.
reads them? I only ever read those physically. It's Kramer and Redding.
They read the second and third, but the first is by. I like the narrator for the first one, and then I was like, well, maybe I just don't like the second and the third because, and I just was like, Lila Bard is so.
You're not
I
a
don't know
fan.
the word. She's just in your face a lot in the second book.
She
But I
was
actually feel like reading the whole series, like as the series all together, I really liked it actually.
the way to
So,
go.
mhm.
Nice. I've never reread that because the third book made me irritated. So I just always was like, ugh, no.
I know
There's so
you
many
said that
plot
about.
points. It was before the like follow-up series was even announced. And reading that third book, I was like, there's so much crap in here that makes no sense and doesn't need to be here, has nothing to do with this plot. We just leave it open-ended, like whole chapters of like, what's that? We don't know, never tied up.
I wonder
That I was like,
what
it
your
feels like she's writing more books in the series. And then she did, and it just irritated me.
there's like a certain POV that I really really liked that I think if it's who you're talking about that I'm like, yeah, but I didn't feel like angry that it was there. I just remember hating Lila and rereading it. I was like, I mean, she's still not my favorite character, but like, she's not in the book as much as I like first initially thought. I guess, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I
My
feel like there's a
favorite
lot of
remember
thing
liking
about
her.
that series is that she named a character Alucard without actually knowing that that's Dracula backwards. She just liked the sound of the name Alucard, and everyone was like,
Seriously?
"What does it mean that he's Dracula backwards?" She's like, "It doesn't mean anything," because I didn't realize that that was the case.
That's
I think it's
hilarious.
because I feel like don't they call him Luke in the book at some point, and that's also what the guy's name is in Addie LaRue, and I'm like, does she just really like that, like
That
anything
naming
that can be that
convention
nickname or something?
probably
Because
must
I
be.
don't
Who
know.
knows?
I
That's
still
so
think
funny
that
about Alucard. I didn't know that.
Whereas, like, I don't know if you guys have read Vicious, but both of the main characters are
Mm.
named after her.
Oh,
So
no,
she's
I haven't.
Victoria Schwab, and he's Victor, and the other guy is Eli. Her middle name is Elizabeth.
Oh,
didn't know that.
interesting.
But yeah, Vicious is probably my favorite book by her that I've read. But I need
Same, like
I haven't
hard
read that
same.
one.
It's
I
my
need to
favorite
try
book
that
in a
one.
while.
Yeah, I think I need to try that one.
That's actually one that, yeah, the first time I read it, I didn't really like it. But that's because, like, have you seen what the original cover looked like when,
Yeah.
like, not the new ones, but the old one where it's like much more like kind of like painted looking, where he's like standing on a balcony and it looks very like an oil painting kind of.
Oh, I think I have.
Because that's the one I got, and I just knew it was fantasy, and I had that cover and something about like rivals in magic, and I
Yeah.
was thinking The Prestige or something like that. And I started reading, I was like, they're in college, they're mutants. I was like, what the heck is this? Ew, no, this is not what I wanted at all. And then like, it was like, you know, then I reread it knowing obviously what it was actually going to be, and I was like, actually, okay, now that I like know what it is, and I'm not like blindsided,
Yeah.
it's actually pretty good.
I need to check that one out because I've been so hit or miss with
Yeah, I
E.A. Schwab, and I just haven't been interested in like Addie LaRue. I just was like, I don't care. So,
Yeah, I think Addie LaRue's overhyped, but I still I still feel like it's I don't get why that's like her most popular considering the other books I guess because it's a standalone, so more people are willing to try it.
And it's
Probably.
more romancy, I think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I hear. Yeah. What about you, Leanna? Do you have any surprising?
Yeah, my patrons picked a book for me to read that like I'd never heard of. I vaguely had heard of the author. And the one thing I had read by that author that I was like, I think I've read something by her. I didn't really like it though. But this was her adult debut, and like that also doesn't go well very often.
Yeah.
Like they're like, I'm gonna do adult now, and you're like, but why though?
Are you?
So like I would never have picked this up if they hadn't picked it for me. And it didn't start out that good. But then I got into it, and like I was like giving it like no benefits of the doubt because like one, I already didn't really think I liked this author, and two, the beginning it wasn't good, and then I just was like more suspicious of things. I was like, well, this is kind of good, but like I'm gonna like read it pessimistically, and by the end I was like, okay, actually no, like that was good, that was really good actually, so no, like my bad. And that was The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chakshi.
Oh, I want to try that.
I really like that book too, actually.
Yeah.
But what did you not like by her?
The Gilded Wolves.
Oh, I
I
tried
did.
that and I DNF'd it.
Yeah, I
Oh,
read
look
the
at that.
first
And
one in
then-
that series. And
What
it
was
felt
the
like,
one from? She had one before that that I
that's the only
read.
one that I've read.
Star
But
Touch
I think-
Queen.
Yeah,
What
the
was
Star
it?
Touched Queen.
Yeah. I tried
And
that
she
one too, and there
also-
was something I didn't like
Didn't
about
she
it. I
write
don't
some like
remember.
Rick Riordan Presents books? Like
Oh, I
Bruce
think
Shaw.
so. Yeah. I didn't read those though.
Anyway, so the only one I'd ever read was Gilded Wolves, and I didn't like it. This actually, like, so it was I think they picked it for me or thought I would like it because and it says it on like this copy too, that it's comped to Starling House, and it's comped to The Bloody Chamber. I've never read The Bloody Chamber, but I love Starling House, and like I get why it's comped to that, but it more reminded me of what it's like reading a Mona Awad book, like reading Rouge or Bunny, because it has this like you can't totally tell if this is real or not ever.
Yeah.
And like I think there's like a difference between kind of like magical realism and where you truly are like, I don't know if this is real or not. I don't know if what you're telling me is real or not. You're
Yeah.
using such like magical language that I don't even know if you mean it as a metaphor or as really happening. And I think it could
Yeah.
be either one. So I think she like at first, like I think also that it's like a dual POV, and it's mostly the one POV at first. Like you don't even know there's gonna be another POV until a little bit in, and that's also why I didn't like it that much, because I think the POV that we start out with and mostly have in the beginning is by far weaker. The other POV is like so much better. And I, for a long time in the book, I was like, do we even need the first POV? Could we have just done the second POV? Like, what is this here for? And by the end, like, I was like, okay, I get why we needed the other POV. You should have made it better though, because that's like your first impression of this book. It's not that great. But like when by the end I was like, okay, that you kind of nailed it though. That was actually really good.
Nice. Yeah, that one I want to try, but I'm like very nervous because it sounds like when I hear people talk about it, I'm like, part of it sounds like right up my alley, but then I struggle with like magical realism-esque things a
Yeah, when
lot. So I'm like, I don't know, I might DNF it. But I mean,
if I
I've
hear
really
someone say
DNF.
like, you don't know what's real or not, that's usually like a huge anti-buzzword because I'm like, okay, well, like either we're gonna do
I want to
fantasy or
know.
we're gonna do not fantasy. Like it's hard. It's a hard
Yeah.
writing stuff in the middle. I feel like it's hard.
I think,
Yeah.
well, I agree. And I think most people do it badly, which is why when I, by the end of it, because it was doing that kind of thing, I was like, you're just doing this for like artistic flourish. You're just doing this because you think it sounds kind of like flowery and fancy. And then by the end, I was like, I apologize. That actually almost thematically significant and well done.
Nice.
Yeah, I really
Well,
like
that's
that book.
good. That makes me more excited to like
So don't
try
be
it
so
out.
mean to it like I was when you're reading it. Like give it the benefit of the doubt.
Going into it all like, it's gonna be stupid. I'll try not to. Any other like most surprising ones that you guys wanted to chat
I
about?
have one that I kind of would say that, but like I know what one of the other questions is, and it's a better answer for that, so I'm not
Oh,
gonna
okay.
say.
I have one more
Um,
that yours truly by Abby Jimenez, because I don't care for contemporary romance very often. And like even ones that I'm like, like I just find them like okay. Like the what Take a Hint, Danny Brown I read, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I
I
have
like
a
that.
lot of issues, but fine. And then I read Funny Story last year by Emily Henry. That was my only Emily Henry I've read, and I found it fine, cute sometimes, very annoying other times. And then the first book in this series, Part of Your World, I really, really liked it, but one of the main characters annoyed me to the point of like, yeah, I wouldn't say it's like fave or like so great, but this one, I think it was surprising because they still annoyed me at times. Like there were still elements of like, you guys are idiots, just talk to each other. Holy crap. But it was done in a way that made me like, it was like endearing, and I found myself being like, you big silly dummies, you like each other, come on, just talk, like being like finding it cute and fun instead of so irritating. And I just really liked the main characters a lot and their dynamic. I found myself like, the like giggling, kicking your feet and like giggling
Mhm.
to yourself, like a little meme thing. That was me for this book. So yeah, very surprising because that's very difficult for contemporary romance to do for me.
Does it
Right.
count as surprise? 'Cause I know the question of most surprising, I think it means you're surprised that you liked it is like the surprise. But so this isn't quite that, but I was surprised that One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig is a retelling of The Highwayman. So I was reading
It
it.
is?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Right. So then I was reading it and I was like, okay, okay. And then like it doesn't really like become apparent until like the last quarter. And suddenly it's just like straight up doing the Highwayman. And I was like, are we doing the Highwayman? We are doing the Highwayman. I was like, I did not know.
Oh, wow.
Which made me instantly like, I was just like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. So then
I
I
haven't
like flew
read
through
that
the
one
last
yet, and I want
quarter.
to pick it up because I feel like it might be up my alley. One Dark Window.
It's
I don't
before
know.
the realization that it's the Highwayman. It mostly is Venom goes to the Ren Fair.
Nice.
Because she has this like
I
nightmare
love
thing in her head that's like it's Venom, but then it's like like a fantasy world with like corsets and daggers and stuff, and Highwaymen. So like it's like if a pretty lady in a fantasy world had like
Had
Venom in
Venom.
her head.
Interesting. Interesting. Did
I
you have any
have,
more, Andrew?
yeah, I have one dark window on hold. The library. It's like a
Oh, nice.
2 month wait. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's so popular. Like, I would actually say another one of my surprising is this book called Cassandra in Reverse, which is like a lit fic book, which I normally hate. because they're like, style over substance, I feel like. But I'm really enjoying this, like taking the good things to fantasy and the good things about lit fic writing, like that coming together is like such. But the book itself is about this woman named Cassandra, and she can like it's like a contemporary setting, and she's in like somewhere in, I think, London, and she can go back in time, but she can only go back in time like if she has a conversation where she's like, didn't like how I said that, she'll just rewind, I think, like up to a
Um,
week or something. So it's just an
um,
interesting like exploration of like she just keeps she's like, I can say whatever I want. Mess it up, I'll just rewind it.
she can go
So
back.
yeah, I just remember
That
thinking
sounds
it was
fun.
yeah.
That does sound fun. Yeah. I have to check it out. All right. Favorite new author. Does anyone have one? I do have one. And I can't remember if I read
Wait, is it favorite new author or new favorite author? Because like technically that's
or
different.
yeah, new
Yeah.
favorite author. Yes.
Okay.
Not necessarily a debut. Yeah, that's
Okay.
what yeah. Mine would have to be, I think, Foz Meadows, because I read A Strange and Stubborn Endurance, and I can't remember when I read that, if I read it before or after this. Uh, and then the sequel to that one, I did DNF. Just that's like fantasy
My new
romance.
favorite author, and I DNF.
No, because that was
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't
fantasy
know if I would
romance.
qualify that.
Because the sequel to A Strange and Stubborn Endurance is it's that duology is fantasy romance, and I love the romance, but the beginning of the sequel kind of like regresses and into
Mhm.
like lack of communication trope, and I was just like, no thanks, I'm out actually. But the first book I loved. It has a lot of trauma, like there's a main character, there's some essay on page, and with like right in the beginning, and then the rest of the book is kind of this guy like dealing with this and like processing and coping and learning to trust again. And there's his love interest is just like the sweetest little cinnamon roll who's just like perfect. He's just amazing and like so understanding and patient, and it's like a marriage of convenience, and it's just it's so cute. Very low like the fantasy elements I didn't really care that much about. The plot, there were parts of the plot that I was like, that doesn't really make sense, but I don't care because I love them
The
so
year of Deshauna realizing she's a character-driven reader.
apparently.
Mhm.
But then this duology I freaking love so much. Portal Fantasy, and I'm
Mhm.
rereading it right now because these are re-edited versions from Angry Robot Books, which I really love Angry Robot Books, by the way. Anyways, but it's like
That has nothing to do
so
with isn't JJ Abrams' production company called Angry Robot?
I don't know. I don't think it's this. It's just a it's an indie publisher. It's under
Okay.
like
Well, because
Watkins
like Disney
Media.
Hyperion publishes books too. So I was like, does Angry
Right.
Robot, the production company,
Oh
publish
no,
books?
no, I don't think so. Yeah, it's
What's
Angry
that
Robot
first
Books.
book on?
But yeah, it's just like delicious. There's like so much to sink your teeth. There's so much like cultural stuff. It's a girl in our modern like Earth that gets she randomly sees a lady go through a portal and is like, "What?" and follows her and falls into this other world, and it's like a multiverse situation, and it's like this completely foreign world that has like two suns, and one is like this giant white sun. There's weird creatures. The culture is like incredibly different. There's no patriarchy in sight. And very like complex marriage setup, and it's a very queer normative world. But yeah, she like doesn't speak the language. There's tons of magic though. There's language magic, like word magic that certain people have. So that's how she like gets to learn the language. And she falls into this group of people who are like part of some political coup, and she's just like along for the ride. And it's just there's so much to sink your teeth into. Like it's just so good. It's pretty complex with like the cultural stuff, but the plot itself isn't all that complex. It's like politics, a coup, a rebellion. We're going to find someone else to put on the throne. Let's go find an army, that kind of thing. But yeah, all the cultural stuff and like the internal stuff going on with our main character. She's a teenager who's just dropped into this and like struggling and having to like fight people and kill people and just like what is going on. And she can see that her family is like panicking, not knowing where she is, looking for her because someone can like dream magic thing and they can see. And so she knows this and she can't get back. It's a lot, but it's so good. And so, yeah, I think Foz Meadows would have to be a new fave for me.
That's a lot of buzzwords that you just said for me. Dream magic, normative. You said it's An Accident of Stars is the first one?
Yeah, that's the first book, is An Accident of Stars. And then
The whole time you were holding it, I thought it Stars was Mars, and I was imagining all of this taking place on Mars.
Not Mars. Oh god, too funny. But yeah, definitely a new fave, I think. How about you, Andrew?
I have one that I feel like she's very controversial, but I
Uh-oh.
feel like Allie Hazelwood.
Oh,
It's funny because this is how I feel my reading always goes. Is I see people bash the shit out of like authors like this, and then I go into it like, okay, let me go read some trash, and I'm like, why did I love this? Like,
yeah, I
so
see
I
Allie
guess
Hazelwood being very polarizing, like people either loving or
yeah,
hating.
I think it's so fun. I've read all I guess I didn't realize they were like a companion series, like this one, Love Hypothesis and Love Theoretically, because they're all like
Similar.
women in STEM
Yeah.
settings.
Yeah, she likes to
They're
do that.
well,
Doesn't she?
yeah. Well, that's her job, I think, in real life. But
Oh, that makes sense.
yeah, like
That makes sense.
yeah, I really like her book.
Isn't the fantasy one too, Bride or whatever? Isn't that main character like kind of in STEM somehow or something? That's what I heard. I haven't read it.
I haven't read that one. I own it, but I haven't read it.
This reminds me of the author of Discovery of Witches being an IRL historian. So she wrote a story about how a historian gets like a vampire lover, and the historian is like the specialist special. It's like,
Like, let me just insert
feel like-
myself.
Also, Allie Hazelwood seems to be like, I'm sure there was Kylo Ren fanfic before her, but I feel like she's really like now, like what is
Put
that
it
book,
on
The
there.
Hurricane Wars? Like I keep seeing TikToks that are like, these are all originally started as Raylo fic, and I'm like, I should read them.
Since I like
I
this
like that's
other
my
one.
man. I like enemies to lovers. So
Did you read all the Allie Hazelwoods all last year?
no, I've only read the Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain, but I just finished the Love Theoretically like
Oh.
this.
But like
Yeah,
calling all of these Raylo, how dare? The original Raylo is Dark Lena, and obviously Raylo is copying Dark Lena. So I don't understand why
that.
we've decided to rebrand.
Yeah, it's all Dark Lena.
I feel like you're correct. I actually, yeah, that's just another series I want to reread is Shadow and Bone.
I need to reread that too.
I'm still
I-
gutted that they canceled the show.
I've only
Um,
I reread the Grishaverse and liked it far less upon reread.
Well, we read it together, right? You, me, and
Wait,
Jesse.
all of them?
Yeah, and I was so
Even-
annoyed with freaking Mal. Like,
Yeah,
oh
you
my-
and I shouldn't talk about that.
Yeah, I was
Even like Six of Crows less? Like you read the
I
whole
haven't
Grishaverse?
reread Six of Crows. I need to reread it.
Six of Crows is the goat.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I rated it originally, but I remember I wasn't like obsessed like a lot of people, but I liked it. And I was like, oh, this is better than the Grishaverse trilogy. But like it like half of it went out of my brain, and it was like 2017 or 18 that I
First
read
time to
it.
reread.
Yeah.
I also read Six of Crows first time, didn't like it, reread it, loved it. Like
Wait, why didn't you like it the
You-
first time though? I'm so curious. Like,
it's just one of those things too where the opposite thing happens where it's like people hype it up so much and
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
says it's the greatest fantasy ever, and then you read it and you're like, I mean it's
Like,
good,
it's
but
fine.
like it's like level, and then when I was like, no,
Yeah.
I read it and it wasn't that good. And I reread it with like a negative mindset, like, why is this proving me wrong?
Like, wait, I actually liked
rereading
it
the
a lot.
Tale of the Flower Bride and just the whole book, like without reread, is me going like, I don't think actually. Okay, well, actually, no.
Wait a minute.
Exactly.
Just surprising ourselves.
I read Six of Crows like right before I ever like joined the bookish internet, and I think it had pretty recently come out, and I didn't know about the Grishaverse. I didn't know about Lee Bardugo. It was just like, this is a new release, and I was like, that's a cool cover, and I read it and I loved it. And then I was like, oh, there's books that come before this. I was like, that might explain some bits in there that were like, okay, I don't know what this is, but fine.
Like, that
So,
makes
yeah,
sense.
there was no opportunity. Like Name of the Wind too. Like I read long before Bookish Internet. So like I don't know if I would have liked those books that much if I had like read them because everyone was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
And I think that's most people's experience is like reading it and being like, is it the greatest thing ever? And I was like, well, when you randomly picked it off a shelf in a bookstore and read it on the bus and we're like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
It's like very different.
Yeah.
See,
Dude, that was me with freaking Sarah J. Maas early on. I read Throne of Glass, the books that were out, and the first 2 books in ACOTAR before getting on BookTube and like being in any kind of like online bookish community. And I was obsessed. And I was like telling all my friends, like, you have to read it. And then when I reread
ACOTAR because I think like Amazon, when I, bought Six of Crows, started suggesting
like,
other books to me, including A Court of... No, I think it suggested A Court of Mist and Fury to me. And I was like, that because I like the original covers of those they're pretty intriguing looking. But then I was like, oh, this is not book 1. And then I saw book 1 was ACOTAR, which the cover is not great. And I was like, well, I guess I have to read that first if I want to read this cool looking one.
If I want to get to the good one with the good cover. Buddy. I still need to reread that too, ACOTAR. I've never reread it.
The Name of the Wind. I first saw reviews of that from Elle, who is not a fan of Name of the Wind. So I was like, let me go read
don't listen to her.
So I read it and I was like, this is my favorite fantasy book I've ever read in my life. Like, I hate that because I wish it was a completed series.
Yeah, but I also think that the Kingkiller Chronicle, unlike some other series, like obviously like you want more because it's good and there are questions that are unanswered, but it's not this like huge mystery that you're like must have the answer, you can't leave us hanging like this. Like it's kind of like Journey, that you're like, well, this is the journey so far, and like I really hope we finish the journey someday, but like it's just kind of so far.
That's one that I have never tried, and I go back and forth all the time on like just writing it off, and like so many times I hear people talk about it and I don't think I would like it, but then I hear other people talk about it, I'm like, well, maybe I would. I don't know.
I really can't tell with you.
Only one way to know.
I bet you would hate Denna.
Denna? I'm sure.
People love to hate Denna, and I bet you would hate Denna, just like you hate Mal.
I do hate Mal.
So long since I read it,
but like Gentleman Bastards also unfinished, but that like Where We Are So Far ends on this huge bombshell cliffhanger that it's like, how dare you, sir, just leave us like this? Whereas like Wise Man's Fear, it's like, I mean, could you finish it, please? But it doesn't end on like a bum bum bum.
Yeah, you're not like totally left hanging completely.
Yeah, you're like, I mean, it would be great to have some more, but
yeah,
right.
It'll be all right. Yeah, I need to at least try it. I don't know, because I mean, I'll DNF it if I feel like it. Obviously.
I feel like one of the biggest things is like if you really love the writing style, then you're just gonna like love it. But if you don't love the writing style, then you're gonna be like, well, I mean, the story is fine, but like I don't care. So that's like the main thing, and you're gonna know if you like the writing style pretty quick. And if you do, well, then off you go. This is your new favorite. And if you don't, then you're like, well,
yeah, I need to try. I need to see.
Like reading like Audible reviews. I don't know why. For some reason, I was like, let me go read the Name of the Wind reviews on Audible, and I just started laughing so hard because every review was like, nothing happens in this book. There's nothing. There's no plot at all, and I'm like, and yeah, I still love it.
See, it's like first law. Yeah. But my favorite new favorite author, not favorite new author, because he's definitely not a new author, is
new favorite author. I should change the thing.
Is I'm that nitpicky because I'm like, wait, those mean different things. Is China Mieville. I read Perdido Street Station, and then immediately after, because it had just come out, read the Book of Elsewhere. I didn't like plan to do that. I just like the buddy read for my patrons was Perdido Street Station pretty immediately before this was coming out. And then I kind of knew about this, but I wasn't paying attention to it until I read Perdido Street Station. And then I was like, oh, right, this is about to come out. Oh, let's read that too. He's definitely not an author that's for everyone. Like, I guess a lot of favorites are like that. Obviously there's no one that's for everyone. But like, you feel more confident recommending things more broadly.
Blanket recommending,
Like, I think First Law has broader appeal than China Mieville, and First Law is also definitely not for everyone. Like when I was reading Perdido Street Station, like by the end of it, I was like, okay, I think I'm obsessed with this. But when I was first starting to read it, I was like, this is so weird. Oh my god, this is so weird. And like
It's
I
like super
literally
out
was
there,
like,
right?
is what?
It's like
Yeah.
super out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty out there. And like I was literally, I'm sorry if you can hear sirens. Oh
No,
my god,
I
it's
can.
so
Oh,
loud.
yeah, now
You
I can.
definitely can hear that.
I'll
Yeah.
hear it.
No way, have an emergency elsewhere.
Go
Um,
away. It's not that bad. I
Oh,
can still
thank
hear
goodness.
you.
it's like this street that they just like always use to get to the freeway, so it's like not even an emergency near me. But anyway, yeah, when I started reading it, I was like, this is so bizarre that I'm just like trying to imagine like if you were like a brand new like you're not a published author, you know, you're just like like you're hoping to get published someday and you're working on a manuscript and you like went to your family or your friends and you're like, okay, here's the thing I've been working on and it's Perdido Street Station, and they would start reading it and they'd be like, are you well? Like, should we call someone? Like,
Do you need
what is
assistance?
this? Is this a cry for help? Like, it's so weird. But yeah,
Not
I'm
for
kind of,
beginners.
Funny.
I feel like if it's like, I don't know, if you're okay with the weirdness of it, and then you're also like, because it's like quite like, I feel like this makes it sound, I don't know, I don't want like describing it like this, but I can't think of how else to describe it. It's like philosophical, by
Yeah.
which I mean like it's like a lot of stuff going on. It's super weird, but like he's like using all of this weird shit to like kind of unpack some questions that he's interested in, and his like, so what does, you know, that mean, or like how
Mhm.
what would we do with this, or how do you parse this as a moral question when this is what's happening, like how do you make
Yeah.
sense of that, like that kind of a thing, with also some like kind of weird metaphysics and whatever. And I just think that's all like so interesting. So I was just like, I mean, yeah, weird. You have to kind of be on board for how super weird this is. But I was like, yeah, I'm super interested in all those questions and like the way that he kind of just, especially how the way that it ended, he wasn't like using the book to make a point. He was using the book to make you feel uncomfortable and ask questions. Because by the end of it, it kind of leaves off on this note of like, so what's the right answer? Because like, I don't know, neither. And he's like, yeah, neither. So there's no right answer. And you're like, oh, so uncomfy, but oh, so interesting. So I've never read anything like that.
Yeah, I want to check it out. It sounds
Didn't
It
he
sounds
also
intriguing.
write The City in the City? Is that him or is that somebody else?
The what?
The City in the City?
I don't know.
Possibly. I mean, he's written other stuff. So like Perdido Street Station is the first in the Baslag series. So the second one is The Scar, and the third one is The Iron Council. I haven't read those yet. You could totally read Perdido as a standalone. So like I want to read the next ones because I liked it, but you don't like need to. It doesn't end in a way where you're like, this is book one. And then yeah, like I think it's because like when I was obsessed with Perdido Street Station, so I was just interested. And then like this is the one he wrote with Keanu Reeves, which is like the he took the character from Berserker and wrote this book, so that's why Keanu Reeves is involved, because Keanu Reeves did Berserker. But it's not really a story, like at all. This is not one of those like, oh, it's kind of plotless. Like it's just like not a story. Like that's not what this is. And so the people who are like mad at it and don't like it, like I get it. But the thing that it is, I really, really like, because it's like, so B from Berserker is this like immortal, like godlike, like, you know, powerful being. And so this book is more like, because it's never from like B's perspective, it's like all these other people that are like affected by or near or interested in him. And it's kind of just like talking about what that thing of being this immortal thing is from the perspective of like the person that has to fight with them, the person that has to marry them, the person that is their therapist, the person that is like all these like different angles from which to kind of like unpack that. And I just think it does such a good job. Like so many books that have like immortal, powerful characters, I hate them because I'm like, okay, an immortal being like wouldn't think the way we do. They wouldn't act the way we do. Their priorities wouldn't be like ours. And I hate it so much. And here I was like, yes, yes, yes. This is how you write like about an immortal character. Like hell yes. Like, okay, it's not a story. Concede. It is not a story. But also, yes, this is how you do it. So I'm upset.
Like,
that sounds fun.
Experiment.
Yeah, that is always so true. Like I was watching a reaction to freaking Twilight earlier while I was eating my breakfast, and people always talk about that, like how they're like going to school. You're like, why? If you're a freaking vampire, if you're eternal, why would you go to high school?
Yeah. Well, like the part of Book of Elsewhere that made me go
all the places.
Yeah, the part of Book of Elsewhere that made me go, they get it, or at least China Mabel gets it. that is it's like some random part of it, and it's not like a big part. Well, there's no story, so whatever. Where like B is like he's using vinyl, you know, to like listen to music, like that's what he wants to do or prefers. Or I forget if he's putting it on or saying that he prefers it or something like that, but either way it comes up. And whoever he's talking to gives him shit for it, and it's like, oh, you're like a hipster, I didn't know you were like a hipster. And they talk about how like a CD or MP3 is like so much more convenient and so much faster. And he's like, I'm immortal. I have so much excess time. The fact that this takes longer is what appeals to me about it. Is because I have the one thing I have an inexhaustible supply of is time. So taking up more of my time is the thing that I like about this. And I was like, yes.
That does make sense. Yeah. Like I'm not in a rush at all.
Yeah. And it's like, it's that thing of like, you know, you can't think like a normal person when you write an immortal character, because like that's just like not their experience.
Yeah. That is intriguing. I want to check it out. See if this will be one that we agree on or that I hate. Or just DNF. Like, nah.
I mean, I get why it's like polarizing when people are picking it up and they're just like, oh, I just want like a cool adventure about some like immortal like badass. And then they're like, what the hell is this? Like, I get that, but I think it's great.
Sounds interesting. All right. How about some faves? Top faves. We've kind of talked about some, obviously. I just said 3 to 5, just however many, whatever. Definitely one of my faves was An Accident of Stars. And I actually liked the duology, or the sequel better, Tyranny of Queens. I think I gave this one 4.5 the first time, and I gave this 5. So, yeah, definitely a favorite fantasy series of all time now, though. For sure. And it's holding up on reread. Absolutely. I'm just like, oh, yes. Just delicious. So much to stick my teeth into. I love it. And then another fave was a sequel. Another sequel. I had a good time with sequels. The first book is The Judas Blossom. It's by Stephen Arion. But The Blood Dim Tide. It's fantasy. It's historical fantasy. And it's following, Stephen Arion is Persian. He's Iranian. And it's following like the Mongol Empire invading Persia. And so there's characters who were real people in history. But he's obviously taking liberties with certain elements of it. And we're following, it's like 4 characters who are kind of all interconnected. And in the first book, the fantasy, like magic and stuff doesn't come in until like towards the very end. And there's a lot of like military stuff going on, like military, like strategizing in the first book. That isn't always my fave. So that book, I was kind of like, okay, like I like it. But then the ending, I was like, wait, just a minute here with like the fantastical elements. And then this just like ramped it up with the fantastical elements. And it has something I love, which is, in this case, they're not actually eternal beings, but they're very long-lived, like hundreds and hundreds of years beings who are like meddling in politics and meddling in the world, but like trying to like
vinyl.
What?
And prefer vinyl.
They're very like in the background though, like they're not like out in the front, like being like kings and queens or anything like that. Like they're very much like on the back end, just like moving pieces around the board in ways that they think should. And this group, there's like 2 factions, and there's one faction that's kind of nefarious and trying to do bad things, and the other one that's much more neutral and just trying to like keep humanity going on a positive note. And the other ones are like, F this, we're going to mess things up. And it's just so much fun. Oh my God, I had so much fun with that sequel. I love that, I don't know, like trope or that character archetype. I'm realizing like the old guard and this, and there's a character like this in the First Law as well, which the top 3 really is this whole trilogy, because all 3 I gave 5 stars.
Yeah.
And I like kind of can't pick like a fave. I feel like maybe the first book and then the third and then the middle one, but honestly, I love them all. So I'm not sure which one would be my actual fave, but yeah, I freaking
love that for you.
I ate it up, man. I ate it up. And like I read them back to back, because like the minute I would finish one, I'm like, I don't want to start the next one.
For binging them.
Yes, I was obsessed and was messaging Leanna during.
It was the
Yeah.
highlight of the end of my year.
Yeah, so great. So those are my top faves. Had a pretty good reading year. I know, Andrew, First Law is not going to be in your top faves.
You know what? It's funny because it's almost like I feel like I have the opposite like critique that I see Leanna with cozy fantasy. Like I feel like I have not like I prefer cozy fantasy. Like not that I've read a lot of it, but I feel like First
I like
Law
it.
and like those
First
really
Law
dark
is
things,
my
they're like
comfy, cozy fantasy.
I
It's
feel
my
like
version.
they're trying to do something in fantasy that I'm not ready for.
My
I
emotional
need
support
more.
torturer.
I need yeah. I need more like. Although I did, I was gonna say one of my favorites was Black Sun. I've since finished the series, but I would not. I actually like the second book even more than the first book, but I feel like the third book
Wow,
really,
that's a rare.
and I know that's unpopular. I
Yeah.
think it was much better pace and the POVs. Like I feel like this series really suffered from too many POVs because
Uh,
like the first two were so good, and I feel like it was like I don't know if y'all read the Poppy War, but Poppy War is like a. It's funny I just said how I'm like oh, I'm dark, but Poppy War is like one of my favorite series ever. So
I love
I
cozy fantasy, like Black Sun and Poppy War.
like the Poppy War. It was like if
Meanwhile,
you
Tashana, my
had
new
Ren's.
favorite author, who I DNF'd. You guys aren't not understanding these questions.
Yeah, I
we
don't
love it.
know.
I loved
When
Black Sun when I read it a couple years ago, but I tried the sequel, and I DNF'd it, and I had Elle tell me what happened. I was like, what happened? Because she told me, she was like, there's really only like one key plot point that like you need to know. The rest of it like is kind of whatever. And so yeah, I started it and I was like, nope, I'm out. Which was very disappointing because I loved Black Sun. Yeah, it was good.
Mhm.
It was so good. I liked the cultural like inspirations, and I even liked the one character that everybody freaking hates. What's her name? Oh god. The
Oh,
like
she was like, yeah, that's what I feel like all you needed in this series was Narampa,
yeah,
is that how you say it, and Giala and Serapio. Like we only need
yeah,
those three OP. Every other POV, I was like, I want to get back to the main. And I feel like
to
all
them.
three of them are like it would have been such a satisfying series if we had like maybe focused more on one per book and made it a trilogy. And like I just think it would,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's a trilogy, but made it that I just, and that's how I'm like, I know if I'm like, I would change this about the book. Like I know it's like, but the first book, I wouldn't change it about the first book. Even the second book, I really like the second book. But I feel like the third book is she introduced like another character in the third book, and I'm like, okay, we're already three books deep, and you want to add more
Yeah.
POVs? Like,
What is this?
no,
Did not help. Oh,
no.
It's like
what are
George
some
R. R.
other
Martin
faves?
just like adding POVs like it's his job.
Yeah, he does.
Who does that?
George R. R. Martin.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah, I read all of that show. I mean, I watched all that show for the first time last year, so that's a whole nother thing. But I had never seen
nice.
it, and then I watched it all. I know,
Watch the
and it was so
decline in
good
Fast Forward.
Yeah.
until then.
Yeah. That'll
Um,
happen.
Another favorite for me was this, but this is also really complicated because I don't know if I'm going to finish the series
What?
because I hated Air of Fire. So
Oh, dude. Okay. Listen, that's like so many people's favorite. And I read I think those first few books were out before I got on BookTube. And Air of Fire was painful for me. I was like, I need you to stop. Like it was too drawn out. All her
adding
internal, like,
POV,
I hate
three
myself
books
because
deep.
when I was a child, something bad happened. No spoilers, but like I was so irritated. I was like, shut up. Oh my good God.
No
I
one
don't
told
care.
Jashana your childhood trauma.
No, it wasn't trauma. It was her guilt. It was her guilt for something that she had no control over and being like, I'm a terrible person who
Yeah.
deserves to die because this thing happened and I was a little kid and couldn't do anything about it. And I just was like, this makes no sense. Logically, no sense. And it was so drawn out and so long and it made me crazy. I loved the ending. And then yeah, I loved the rest of the series. So I would urge you to maybe just try, except for Tower of Dawn, because freaking Kale sucks and his book is dumb. I hate
No,
him
I don't.
so
I don't know what I'm gonna do. But it's funny because I feel like Brandon Sanderson and Sarah J. Maas write books in a similar way, and where they put all the plot at the very back of the book,
yeah,
and I'm
they
just like, but
as
if
she
y'all want
goes
to put
on
some more
to
plot at the beginning and the middle,
yeah. They both also have the problem of now that like the editing is nowhere to be
we don't
found.
need that.
And it needs to be. But yeah, Queen of Shadows, I think was my favorite one in the series. But yeah, I loved Crown of Midnight too. The ending like shook me to my core. I had no idea like about anything, and I'm just like carrying along, and then that ending, I was like, "What?"
You guys
Shocked
are
me.
bigger fans. Well, you are fans of Sarah J. Maas. I wonder, what do you guys like the new covers better than the old covers or not? Or what are your thoughts?
I
Because
I
like
don't.
I think it's nostalgia. Like I miss seeing people holding up the old covers. Now when I
Yeah.
see the new covers, I'm like, what the heck book is that? I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's Throne of
I'm
Glass.
Yeah, I
in.
have the original paperbacks, and then I do have the original hardcovers, but I have like a different um like sleeves for them, like like well, I can't remember the Nerdy Ink
Yeah.
ones. But I like the
Mm,
except for I hate the Kingdom of Ash, the yellow on the original. Oh my god, the whole cover is
the
like
other one is
pea
black.
yellow color.
I just feel like for both ACOTAR and
So
the Throne of Glass series, like I mean, again, it's partly that like I recognize them and the new ones I don't recognize them, so
yeah,
it like makes me stop. But I think also they are just more like iconic looking, like they are more immediately
yeah,
recognizable. The new ones,
yeah.
like even if
Are
you
more
know that's
generic.
what they look like now, they don't look as like distinctively like
Yeah,
this is Throne of Glass, this is ACOTAR.
they're more generic. I feel. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I
I
agree.
remember like there was so much discourse about it when it first came out, but I feel like I like the Throne of Glass covers, like the new covers. I think they look more like fantasy covers than the original. I
Mm.
mean, I think people even call the first one, they call it, they say that's the Barbie cover. They're
I
like,
like.
yeah, and I saw somebody on Reddit had like an arc of the first Throne of Glass book with like the marketing campaign on the back, and it was like six figure. I was like, this is so interesting to see like
That's so
how
funny.
she's always going to be a success no matter what because of like marketing.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah, they marketed the heck out of it. Yeah, the
no,
Throne of Glass series held up for me on reread. It's not it very flawed. Many things I have qualms with, and especially as it goes on, and like the editing is just who even is she? We don't know. And like some of the plot stuff, and Crown of Midnight, there's a character death that it's not great, but I still just it was
problematic.
fun, man. It was fun, and on reread it was
I
fun.
saw also a lot of people talking about how she like I didn't realize that the last two Song of Ice and Fire books are taking place, I think, at the same time. And then also
The ones
that the
that are
same,
currently out, you mean? Not like the ones that are going to be coming out?
yeah, not
Yeah.
they are coming
So he
out.
was
Or we
forced
should,
to split it because it was too long. So Feast for Crows, instead of splitting it chronologically, they split it by taking half the POVs and half the POVs. So you get like one side of the world in Feast for Crows. And then Dance with the Dragons is like the other half plus then some more because it then goes on past that.
which is kind of how Tower of Dawn and Empire Storms are. And then I
Yeah.
saw people saying that like there's some girl was making a TikTok that was like Sarah J. Maas copied all this stuff from George R. R. Martin. And I'm like, well, at least her series is complete.
Well, I
But
don't
also,
think that
like, you
that's
could,
like a thing that like Sarah J. Maas is like obviously cribbing a Song of Ice and Fire. Like,
Yeah, no.
I don't think
I
that's.
mean, I haven't read
No.
that
Definitely
girl
not.
on TikTok was like, she copied this, she copied this, she copied that, and
Oh
then
my
some of the
gosh.
comments were like,
It wasn't even
you
George
read
R. R.
other
Martin's
things.
idea to split it like that. It was another author friend of his that suggested that instead of you doing it chronologically, they split it like this. That Daniel Abraham, he suggested that.
Oh yeah.
Mm,
Interesting. I legit, if you do continue with Throne of Glass series, I'm not kidding. If you don't like Kale, I guess if you like Kale, then have at it. But I cannot stand him. And I did read Tower of Dawn, but you could legit just look up like bullet point synopsis and get like just as long there's some plot stuff that happens that you do need to know about and like new characters. So like that's what I would suggest to anyone who feels the
Okay,
way I
Deshauna.
do.
Deshauna, there's 2 new books coming out, hypothetically. and one is entirely about Kale, and one is entirely about Mal. And you
Oh,
have to
God.
read one of them. Which one do you read?
I
Oh,
mean,
that's incredible. I think she likes her
probably.
more, so.
I will probably pick the Kale one.
No other
Because I
characters
don't-
are in it. It's just Kale. It's just
I'll
like
suffer
navel
through
gazing day in the life of Kale.
I'll suffer through. Yeah. Kale, Gale from Hunger Games, and Mal are my three like trifecta of like annoying, problematic to me, like love interest boys they suck and they're not good and they're so annoying and frustrating. But
Did you
Kale's
hate
probably
Kale
the
from
least
like book one?
frustrating of those three for me. So I would pick the Kale one, but I would never reread it. Never ever. Anyway, do you have another fave though, Andrew, to talk about? We got off on a freaking throwing a glass tangent there.
I knew that as soon as I held up that book, I was like, because she's. No, not really. That's three if you count, the first two in the series.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You liked the second one too. What about you, Leanna? What do you got?
I have a few. I was trying to assemble them real quick. I guess some of these like I kind of almost wanted to say this one for a surprise, but then it was far away, and then I was like, oh, I'll get it for a fave. Myst, the Book of Atreus, which is as in like the video game from the 90s, Myst.
Okay.
Which, like, as a 5-year-old child, I attempted to play, and even 50-year-old people are like, "What the heck? Like, what are you supposed to do in this game?" And 5-year-old me was like, "I wonder if you're supposed to do something." Pretty ocean, interesting room. I don't know if this means anything. It was like that memory. And then I don't know how I learned that like there were books that are like there's 3 books. There's the Book of Atreus, the Book of Tiana, and the Book of
Are the books based on the game or the game based on the books?
They're like made simultaneously. These came out when the games came out. So it was kind of hard to find them now. But anyway, so like I was like maybe the mystery will finally be revealed. I was like, I'm curious to read this. And that was mainly why I wanted to read this. And then like I just really loved this. I couldn't put it down. It's very imperfect. Like it feels kind of like clunky and amateurish a bit. Like the pacing isn't like smooth and the prose isn't smooth. But I was just like, I couldn't guess where it would go. And then like a little bit, I don't think this was the majority of it, but a little bit was me like, I think I remember seeing that in the game and having no freaking idea like what that was supposed to be. And now I know. But I feel like the main character, like, even though like this is like not the best book I've ever read, it's not the best prose, not the best world building, but like the way I latched onto this main character and what he was going through, I was going through, where I was just like, if something bad was happening to him, he was being betrayed, he was being hurt. I was like, no, how dare you? I was like so invested in this. And it was also like, I couldn't guess where it would go. It wasn't one of those like, oh, I know this story before I start it. I was like, there's like several mysteries, and part of the mystery is obviously like that game that I never understood as a kid. But like here, like, it's like slowly unraveling stuff to where you're like, oh, this is a great mystery. And then it seems like it's answered and you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess now we know the answer. I guess that's it. And then you're like, wait, no, that's not it. I knew it. There's more to it than that. That's right. Okay, but what does this mean? Oh, that's been answered too. Okay, so then that's it. No, there's more to it. I knew there was more to it. What does it mean? It just like kind of keeps like onioning its way,
Oh, that's interesting.
So I just like had an absolute blast reading this. Like perfect, no, but like I loved it. And I'm definitely gonna read the next 2.
For you.
Yeah.
Huh?
Is it perfect for you?
Perfect for you.
Okay, and like I would point out flaws in it as I was reading it. I was like, this I could, if I was editing it, like I would change this or like, some of it is so like Atreus, the main character, like the Book of Atreus. It starts like when he's a very, very little kid, and then he's like a young adult, like under 20 by the end. Like he's like old enough to feel romantically about things, but he's like very young. And so like there's like a little bit of like the Kvothe like precocious genius child to him. And it kind of makes sense in the story, so I kind of forgave it. But like, especially when he's really little in the beginning of the book, I was like, no kid would say this or notice this. Like, I don't really believe it, but okay. But But he's just
Yeah.
like he's kind of like he's like the genius of Quoth, where it's just kind of like, oh, I guess you're just like good at everything and know everything. But he's like the sweetness of Fitz in Robin Hobb's series, where you're just like, you perfect, sweet, innocent little child. No one should ever hurt you, and they are hurting you, and I can't handle it. So I just felt
That's
so many
good.
feelings.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I
Sounds
think
really
actually you would probably like it.
I'll have to check it out. I've never heard of that game. I didn't know that was a
Myth?
game. Yeah, never heard of it.
You don't have a childhood memory of being baffled?
No. We didn't have a gaming system until I was in middle school. And by then PlayStations were already out, but we got a Super Nintendo as our
Oh.
first one.
No, this was
When I
just like
was, like,
CD, like a CD-ROM, like a PC game that like my dad
Oh,
also
yeah.
did not
I remember that.
understand. Like no
Oh.
one knew what we were supposed to do with it.
Interesting. Interesting.
And
What else we
then a book that I've like inspired other people / forced other people to read, and they agree that it's actually
Forced.
really good. So it's not just me. Is Shakespeare Was a Woman and Other Heresies: How Doubting the Bard Became the Greatest Taboo in Literature.
Oh yeah, I
nonfiction.
remember you talking about that.
But like I mean I like Shakespeare and I'm like interested in like Shakespeare stuff, but I really feel like this is so engaging to read that even if you like, I mean, okay, you have to have like heard of the person called William Shakespeare, that he wrote plays, like that level of knowledge, you are required to have that he was like a playwright. Like you need to have that baseline, but you don't need to like know a ton about like history or
Yeah.
about Shakespeare plays or anything like to find this like really fun to read. Because basically what happened is this journalist, she wrote like a little like think piece for The Atlantic that was like, hey, there's like some like evidence that maybe this lady actually wrote the plays of William Shakespeare. Like, wouldn't it be kind of like interesting to think like, what if that was actually what happened? Like, cool little thought for you for a Sunday afternoon. And then the academia came for her and we're like,
Oh.
how dare you? And she was like, whoa, that is kind of like an exaggerated response. And so then she's like, so you don't want me to be asking that question? Cool. I'm going to go ask that question to everybody. So it's just like kind of following her as she interviews a bunch of people, talks to a bunch of people, either people that are like, yeah, you should be asking this. Like, no one will let you, but you should be asking this. And other people who are like, I know you've decided that you have to ask this. Here's why: you're being ridiculous. And it's ridiculous that you're asking this question. And she's like, no, tell me why I'm being ridiculous. It's just really, and she's like, really good authorial like voice. Like she's like really engaging to read. And then it's also just like really interesting, all the stuff that she talks about in the book that like, again, if you didn't know anything about it before, I think it's still interesting to be like, this is what is known, this is what is not known, this is why people are saying this is why people might be invested in saying this, when it's like, okay, so like let's say, you bite and you're like, okay, let's go with maybe it is all a lie and maybe he didn't write it. So why do people so desperately want to believe that he wrote it? Like what might be the motivation for that? Like asking that question. So I think it's just like really interesting, like kind of a look at like socioeconomic, historical, who lives, who dies, who writes your story, academia, politics. Like it's all just like so interesting. And she writes it like it's like a cheeky Da Vinci Code following like the clues of like, well then, why are we not asking these questions? Why are we not allowed to ask these questions? What is the knowledge? So I think it's just like a ton
It
of
does
fun
sound fascinating. It does sound fascinating.
Yeah, I picked it because like I was interested in it, and then I picked it up. I was like, oh, okay, I should finally read this, and I picked it up and I couldn't put it down. I was like, oh my god, this is so fun to read.
That was good.
I recommend.
I will be reading that.
Yeah, I don't know like a crap ton about Shakespeare necessarily, but I did take a class in college.
See,
and I still have the chunky book that is like the complete works of Shakespeare. I don't know why I keep it. It's like a brick. This book is huge.
And it's like double columns, right? Where like
yeah.
With like Bible thin pages.
Yeah.
And I mean, like the title is obviously like really cheeky. Like you get a sense for like what her vibe is, and like the chapter titles are cheeky, like Bardolatry and Wolfish Earls and Purple Robes Disdained and The Reckoning.
Check it out.
Yeah, like I feel like for nonfiction, like it's like so bingeable.
No, that's good. I need some good nonfiction. some narrative nonfiction.
But, you know, then if you do post a 5-star review of it, then the academics will also come for you and be like, you're swallowing her lies. And it's like, okay. When she talks about how ridiculous you are in this book, you're just proving her point.
Yeah,
And
you're
you
just
go around finding reviews just to be like, here's a paragraph of why these are all lies. Calm down.
just proving the point.
Why are you so
Like, you're
pressed?
not
That's the
making
real question.
yourself look less hysterical with this behavior.
Yeah, seriously. That's what. Yeah. Why are you so pressed? Yeah, you're being hysterical. Relax. It's not that deep.
Exactly.
Did you have any other faves to chat about or no?
I finally read Lightbringer by Pierce Brown, which it came out in 2023.
Is
and I
that
hosted a read along, and I didn't even read Lightbringer when it came out.
is that what one is that in like the series?
6.
It's number 6, and it was supposed to be the last one, but it was again like he can't fit it all in one book. So the last one is going to be Red God, and that's not out yet.
Gotcha.
So
that's one of those that we differ on. That series.
Number 6 overall, number 3 in like the new next gen.
Yeah.
Wait, you don't like Red Rising?
No, I read Red Rising and I thought I liked it initially, but then with time, I like my feelings toward it waned, and I tried the sequel and I DNF'd it almost immediately.
I was gonna say because I do think like the first one's the weakest one, but if you don't like the second one.
I got like a chapter and a half in or something like that, and I was just like, ugh.
Is it the authorial voice or the like characters or
kind of both? Yeah, I didn't care about the writing style, like the authorial voice, like didn't do much for me, and then I don't know, it just didn't.
Just ignore my triple shelves of Red Rising.
I know. It's one I wanted to like so much, but. Yeah, I think when I initially read Red Rising, the hype, like I was like, I liked it because I didn't dislike it, but like I felt like I liked it a lot more than I did, and like with time, I was like, actually,
I did feel a little kind of like because I buddy read Red Rising with Elle and like 2 other people, and in general the buzz for it's really strong. And when I read Red Rising with them, they're like, oh my god, this is so good, this is amazing, we're definitely gonna read the next one. Or no, I didn't read the first. I read the first one by myself. And they had just read the first one as well. And they were like, hey, we're reading it. Do you want to join us for the second one? And I probably wouldn't have read the second one that fast because I read the first one. I was like, that was pretty good.
Fine.
But like, I don't know. Like, I'm not like obsessed with it. But they were like, hey, do you want to read the second one with us? And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, if it's like going to be a buddy read, sure, that sounds fun. And I read the second one. I was like, okay, now I'm obsessed. I was like, okay, I'm so glad that like I was like pulled into reading more because like I didn't get why y'all were so excited for Red Rising, but Golden Sun, that's my bag. Oh, we are so on. This is amazing.
I wish. Was that your favorite one so far of that like second series or no?
Yeah, I'm saying like my favorite has always been and probably always will be Golden Sun as like a reading experience, but like he's grown as an author, so like I feel like Iron Gold, which was the first book of the new series, was better quality. Like he grew as a writer than everything that came before. Dark Age, again, better than everything that came before. And this, again, better than everything that came before. Because you just like, it's really like nice to see an author that isn't like, well, we were just talking about like Sarah J. Maas and Brandon Sanderson. We're like, well, you don't need an editor anymore because you're popular. But authors who are personally like, I know I can be better. I want to be better. And like, there are things that like I avoid doing because I don't think I'm good at it. And I want to like force myself to try to do it, force myself to like, because like the new trilogy is or the new series, because it's not a trilogy anymore, is multi-POV, which Red Rising never was before. So he like completely pantsed all of Red Rising, but when you have multiple POVs, like that's a lot harder to do. He's like, I actually have to like plan this out and like figure out where I'm gonna like switch off and like how much I'm gonna, what I'm gonna do, who my POVs are, like. So he has to be like so much more disciplined and then also. It was the first time he'd written from a perspective that wasn't Darrow. So like all this time I was like, for all I know, Darrow is just you. Like that's just like your voice. So like the fact that you're writing from other POVs now that like proves that maybe Darrow is you, but you can write other people too, apparently, because you're showing that you can do that. So I cried so much reading Lightbringer.
Have you read Red Rising, Andrew? I don't know if you have.
I read the first book, gave it 2 stars.
The first one's not that good, but also I feel like when I learned with Pierce Brown, was like 23 and Rage wrote Red Rising for himself personally. And of course, that's the one that sold. I was like, well, it does read like exactly that. Like this 23-year-old dude, Rage wrote this for himself. I was like, yes, that's what this book is.
Like
And then Golden Sun is like, oh, I need to like fully like actually write this now, like properly. It feels like that.
Yeah. That's so funny.
The average rating for that book. What's the last one called? The newest one that just came out? The one you were just talking about.
Lightbringer?
Yeah, that see, it's like 4.75. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should keep going.
I mean, okay, I would say like Justana tried Golden Sun and didn't like it, so I was like, okay, it's not for you. Because Golden Sun, I think most people agree, is like a big step up from Red Rising. So if you don't like Golden Sun either, that's like, okay, well, he's probably not for you. But
just stop, just keep up. Yeah, or DNF like I did. Do you DNF a lot, Andrew? I don't remember.
I would, yes. I don't really talk about it though. I just like quietly DNF
just
frequently at like 10 to 20% all the time, and then I just don't count it towards anything or talk about it. But because I'm such a mood reader, like I've said, like I don't read, then I reread, and I change my complete opinion. So I'm like,
yeah.
let me just like make sure I'm in the mood. So, but
see here, this is what you do when you read Red Rising. You try to get through the first book because you have to read the first one. You can't skip it, unfortunately. Then you read Golden Sun, which is really good, and it's all just great after that. And what you do is you put on the Pacific Rim soundtrack, and then you read all of Red Rising books with that blasting, and you will be so amped and so ready to go.
You'll be right in the mood, in the perfect
Literally,
mood.
I do that so much that if and when I occasionally watch the movie Pacific Rim, I'm like, why is Red Rising music playing?
You just associated with that now?
It is like the perfect soundtrack for Red Rising. It sounds like if they made a movie of Red Rising, that should be the music.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, I get it. Gotta set the mood. Set the mood right.
I love a revenge story though. So
yeah.
I have potential to like it, I thought.
Speaking of, I'm waiting for my physical copies of Best Served Cold and The Heroes and Red Country because I had to stop the audio because it was not working for me.
No, not because you don't like the narrator.
No, I don't see. Okay, I don't really care about the narrator. I'm like audiobooks in general. Like it's very rare for me to like even notice the narrator unless they're really bad. Like I've read a couple where I'm like, I hate the inflection you're doing. Like there's one female narrator in particular. I can't remember her name, but I've like a couple of audiobooks I came across of hers. And I'm like, I hate, she goes like up at the end of every sentence and it makes me crazy. But otherwise, like if it's not bad, like noticeably bad, I don't like, I'm like, it's a narrator. I don't know. But no, it's just that audiobooks in general, I like struggle to retain the information. And I just kept finding myself having to rewind and like not getting like as hooked into it at all close to how I was with First Law. So I was like, no, we're stopping, we're pausing. And I'm
do what you gotta do. I just
the physical.
I feel like Stephen Pacey is like a one-man play that I'm just like, oh man, look at you go.
Yeah, no, he was good. He wasn't bothering me. It's just I wasn't getting
I feel like he's one of those narrators where like, I mean, in general, Joe Abercrombie's do really good at like character voice where like they distinctively sound like different people.
They have their own.
So when they start talking, you're like, you don't need to have a dialogue tag. I know who's talking. But then when the narrator is also insanely good at having distinctive voices for the characters and like that combined with it, like there's so many times where I feel like the chapter is like trying to trick you about who you think is talking, but I already know who's talking because as soon as Stephen Pacey opened his mouth, I know what character this is. Like you can't like shock me with the revelation of who was talking. I knew the whole time.
How when he's in Glockta's like inner monologue, he doesn't like list, but when he speaks, Glockta's list, which is
unlike the French accent he does for Pharaoh, which Abercrombie had not been imagining. And then after he heard it, now he himself imagines Pharaoh with a French accent because of the narrator.
It's so funny. So funny. Yeah. Well, I guess that's it. Unless, did you have another one that you wanted to talk about?
Me?
Leanna? Yeah.
No, that'll do it.
Yeah. That's all for me too.
Everything else was terrible.
What?
Everything else was terrible.
Everything else. Yeah. I hated everything else I read.
That's your brand, Leanna. You hate it.
I read Red Rising, First Law, and a smattering of other things, and then anything else is just
Everything
trash.
else sucked. No. Yay for things we like. We don't hate things all the time. Look at us.
Sometimes we reread our favorites.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. Appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who joined us watching. Leave a comment. Let us know what some of your faves were, most surprising, or that you hated. That too. Always love that. And everyone have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.